She never thought she'd walk into that moment. Billionaire CEO Vanessa Hart stood frozen in the doorway of her penthouse nursery, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird desperate to escape. There, in the soft glow of the evening light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows, sat a complete stranger. A man she'd never seen before, cradling her 6-month-old daughter Emma in his arms, feeding her a bottle with the kind of gentle confidence that made Vanessa's blood run cold. Her first instinct was to scream, to call security, to protect her child from this intruder. But something stopped her. The way Emma looked at him, completely at ease. The way he hummed softly, a lullaby Vanessa didn't recognize. And most disturbing of all, the way her supposedly loyal nanny, Patricia, stood in the corner with tears streaming down her face, whispering 2 words that would shatter everything Vanessa thought she knew. "I'm sorry." Before we dive into this incredible story of betrayal, secrets, and the most unexpected revenge you've ever heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Revenge Unleashed family. We bring you the most shocking real-life stories of people who refused to be victims and took back their power. Drop a like if you're ready for a wild ride, and comment below telling us what you would do in Vanessa's situation. Trust me, you're going to need to stick around for this one because what happens next will leave you absolutely speechless. Vanessa Hart hadn't built a billion-dollar tech empire by being naive or trusting easily. At 32, she was one of the youngest self-made billionaires in Silicon Valley, having created an AI-driven financial platform that revolutionized how ordinary Americans invested their money. She'd done it all while navigating a toxic marriage to Marcus Hart, a venture capitalist who'd seemed charming during their whirlwind courtship but revealed his true colors the moment Vanessa's company began outpacing his own investments. The divorce had been ugly in public, splashed across business magazines and gossip sites alike. Marcus had tried to claim he deserved half of everything she'd built, despite having contributed nothing but criticism and control. Vanessa's lawyers had crushed him in court, and she'd walked away with full custody of Emma, her miracle baby, the one beautiful thing that had come from that nightmare marriage. Or so she'd thought. The man in her nursery looked up at her with eyes that were startlingly familiar. Dark brown, almost black, with flecks of gold that caught the light. Emma's eyes. The eyes Vanessa had assumed came from her own grandmother's side of the family. He was in his mid-30s, dressed in jeans and a simple gray sweater, with the kind of rugged, worn appearance of someone who worked with his hands. Not the polished executives and tech moguls who populated Vanessa's world. "Mrs. Hart," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the tension crackling in the air. "My name is Daniel Cooper. And I think we need to talk about Emma." Patricia, the nanny Vanessa had trusted for 6 months, who came with impeccable references and a warm, grandmotherly demeanor, finally spoke through her tears. "I should have told you sooner. I should have said something the moment I realized. But Marcus, he paid me. He paid me so much money to keep quiet, to let this happen, and I justified it by telling myself I was protecting Emma. But I can't do this anymore. I can't watch this unfold without you knowing the truth." Vanessa's mind raced through 1,000 possibilities, none of them making sense. She moved swiftly across the room, taking Emma from Daniel's arms despite his gentle protest. Her daughter gurgled happily, completely oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around her. "Someone better start explaining right now, or I'm calling the police," Vanessa said, her voice sharp as broken glass. Daniel stood slowly, holding his hands up in a peaceful gesture. 3 years ago, I was going through the hardest time of my life. My wife had just died from cancer. We'd spent everything on treatments, trying to save her, and I was drowning in medical debt. I was a construction foreman, made decent money, but it wasn't enough. Not for what we owed. He paused, his jaw clenching. A friend told me about this opportunity. A clinic that paid men like me, healthy guys with good genetics, to donate. I needed the money desperately. I signed papers, did what they asked, and tried to put it behind me. Vanessa felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. "What are you saying?" "Your ex-husband owns the clinic," Patricia interjected, her voice barely a whisper. "He owns it through a shell corporation. When you two were struggling to conceive, when you went through all those treatments, Marcus was controlling everything. He made sure you never got pregnant with his child. He has a genetic condition he never told you about, something that would have required extensive screening and treatment. Instead, he orchestrated the entire thing. He chose Daniel's donation specifically. And then he paid me to track everything, to report back to him, to make sure that when the time was right, he could use this information." The words hit Vanessa like physical blows. She stumbled backward, clutching Emma tighter. That's impossible. I went through legitimate fertility treatments. My doctors, they wouldn't. They didn't know, Daniel said, and there was genuine sympathy in his voice. The clinic supplied the sample. Your doctors thought everything was legitimate. Marcus made sure of it. He created an elaborate trail of fake documentation. And he's been planning this for years, waiting for the perfect moment. What moment? Vanessa demanded, though part of her already knew. Patricia pulled out her phone with shaking hands. He's filing for custody tomorrow. He has DNA evidence ready to prove that Emma isn't biologically yours. In California, the laws around assisted reproduction are complicated. He's going to argue that since the donation wasn't properly disclosed, that since there was fraud involved in the conception process, and that since he's the legal father who arranged and paid for the procedure, he deserves custody. His lawyers think they can win. Vanessa felt her world tilting into chaos. Everything she'd built, all the control she'd fought so hard to maintain, it was crumbling. Marcus had planned this revenge from the very beginning. He'd orchestrated her pregnancy, knowing that one day he could use it as the ultimate weapon against her. He'd lost in the divorce, but he'd been playing a longer game. Why are you telling me this? Vanessa asked Daniel, her voice breaking. Why would you come here and risk everything? Daniel's expression hardened. Because 2 weeks ago, Marcus approached me. He offered me $500,000 to testify in court, to claim that I want parental rights, to make this whole thing even messier for you. He showed me pictures of Emma, told me about you, and I started doing my own research. I learned what kind of man he is. What he did to you during your marriage. And I realized that my genetic material was used as a weapon against an innocent woman and child. He took a shaky breath. My wife and I, we always wanted kids. She died before we could have them. The thought that my donation created this beautiful little girl, it means something to me. But not like this. Never like this. I have a daughter out there somewhere in the world, and I won't let her be used as a pawn in some rich man's revenge scheme. Vanessa looked between Patricia and Daniel, her brilliant mind already shifting from shock to strategy. She'd built an empire by outthinking her competition, by seeing 3 moves ahead in every situation. Marcus thought he had her cornered, thought he'd crafted the perfect trap. He'd underestimated her once before. He was about to do it again. Patricia, you're fired, Vanessa said coolly. The older woman's face crumpled, but Vanessa held up a hand. Not because I blame you entirely. But because I can't have someone in my home who can be bought. Pack your things. I'll give you severance, more than generous, but you're done here tonight. Then she turned to Daniel. You came here to warn me. That took courage. It also puts you at risk. Marcus won't take kindly to you betraying his plan. I don't care what Marcus thinks, Daniel replied firmly. I care about doing what's right. Vanessa studied him for a long moment, this unexpected stranger who shared DNA with her daughter, this blue-collar single dad who'd chosen integrity over $500,000. An idea was forming, brilliant and ruthless and absolutely perfect. How would you like to help me destroy him? She asked. Over the next 3 weeks, Vanessa became someone she never thought she'd be. She'd always prided herself on playing by the rules, on winning through intelligence and hard work. But Marcus had changed the game, had shown her that sometimes rules were just constraints that people like him exploited. She hired a team of private investigators who made the FBI look like amateurs. She had them dig into every aspect of Marcus's life, his businesses, his shell corporations, his clinic. What they found was explosive. Marcus hadn't just used his fertility clinic to manipulate Vanessa. He'd been running a scheme for years, telling wealthy couples that he was using their own genetic material when he was actually substituting donations from men he kept on retainer, men he could control and potentially use for leverage later. At least 15 other families had been deceived the same way. The implications were staggering, not just legally but emotionally, financially, and socially. Vanessa built her case carefully, documenting everything. But she needed one more piece to make her revenge complete. She needed Marcus to incriminate himself, to reveal his true intentions in a way that couldn't be denied or explained away. That's where Daniel came in. They rehearsed for days. Daniel, it turned out, had done some theater in college, and he could play a role convincingly. Vanessa set up a meeting, telling Marcus through intermediaries that Daniel had reconsidered and wanted to discuss the custody arrangement privately, man to man, before things went to court. Marcus, arrogant as ever, agreed immediately. He thought he was meeting with a desperate, debt-ridden working-class guy who could be manipulated. The meeting took place in a private room at an expensive steakhouse. Daniel wore a wire provided by Vanessa's security team, the kind of equipment that would hold up in court. For 90 minutes, Daniel played his part perfectly, asking questions that led Marcus to brag about his scheme, to detail exactly how he'd orchestrated Vanessa's pregnancy, how he'd planned for years to use it against her, how he'd manipulated the system. She thought she was so smart, Marcus said, his words captured in crystal-clear audio. Building her little tech empire, divorcing me like I was nothing. But I always knew I'd get the last laugh. When I take Emma from her, when I use custody to drain her resources and destroy her focus, her company will collapse. Investors don't trust distracted CEOs, especially women with messy personal lives. I'll buy her company for pennies on the dollar, and she'll have nothing. Not her business, not her daughter, nothing. Daniel, maintaining his act, asked, "What about the other families? The other kids who aren't genetically related to who they think?" Marcus shrugged. Collateral damage. They got healthy babies. They should be grateful. Besides, who's going to believe them if they ever find out? I've got documentation that looks legitimate. It would take a fortune in legal fees to prove otherwise, and most people don't have that kind of money. It was exactly what Vanessa needed. The next morning, Vanessa walked into the courthouse where Marcus was filing his custody motion, but she wasn't alone. She had Daniel by her side, along with her team of lawyers, and representatives from the FBI and the California Medical Board. She also had 15 other families, couples who'd been victimized by Marcus's scheme, people her investigators had quietly contacted and informed over the past weeks. Marcus's face when he saw them all was something Vanessa would treasure forever. The color drained from his cheeks. His expensive lawyer looked confused, unprepared for this ambush. Vanessa's lead attorney filed a motion to dismiss Marcus's custody claim based on fraud, but that was just the opening move. Then came the real devastation. Criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and medical malpractice. A massive civil lawsuit from the 15 families, seeking damages in the hundreds of millions. An investigation into his business practices that would freeze his assets. And the audio recording, played right there in the courthouse, of Marcus detailing his entire scheme. But Vanessa saved the final blow for a private moment. As Marcus was being led out by FBI agents, she stopped him. "You thought you could use my daughter as a weapon against me," she said quietly, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. "You thought you could manipulate me the way you manipulated those fertility records. But you forgot something, Marcus. I built $1 billion empire because I'm smarter than men like you. Because I see patterns others miss. Because I never, ever stop fighting for what's mine." She leaned closer. "Emma is my daughter. Legally, morally, in every way that matters. And you're going to spend the next decade in prison thinking about how you destroyed yourself trying to destroy me." Marcus had no response. There was nothing left to say. The aftermath played out over months. Marcus was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. His clinic was shut down, his assets liquidated to pay damages to his victims. Vanessa's company not only survived but thrived, as investors saw her handling of the crisis as proof of her strategic brilliance. As for Daniel, he and Vanessa developed an unexpected friendship. He didn't want to be Emma's father in the traditional sense, but he wanted to be part of her life, to know that his genetic legacy was being honored. They worked out an arrangement that felt right for everyone. Uncle Daniel, they called him. Emma would grow up knowing her story, knowing that families could be built on truth and choice rather than just biology. One evening, 6 months after everything settled, Vanessa sat in her nursery watching Daniel play with Emma. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "Marcus spent years planning his revenge. He thought he was so clever, so many steps ahead. But he made one critical mistake." "What's that?" Daniel asked, making Emma giggle by tickling her feet. He assumed that because he could manipulate systems and documents and money, he could manipulate people. He thought everyone had a price, that everyone could be controlled. He never understood that some people, when pushed far enough, when fighting for what truly matters, become absolutely unstoppable. Vanessa looked at her daughter, this beautiful, perfect child who'd been meant to be a weapon but had instead become a symbol of resilience, of the family you choose, of the strength you find when the world tries to break you. Revenge, she'd learned, wasn't always about destruction. Sometimes it was about building something better from the ashes of someone else's cruelty. Sometimes it was about proving that their worst couldn't break your best. Sometimes it was simply about standing in the life you'd created, the one they tried to steal, and thriving so brilliantly that their memory fades into insignificance. Marcus had wanted to take everything from her. Instead, she'd taken his freedom, his fortune, his future. And she'd done it by being exactly what he'd always underestimated, a mother who would move heaven and earth to protect her child, a woman who refused to be a victim, and a strategist who could outthink anyone who dared to challenge her. That's the thing about revenge. The people who seek it through cruelty often find it turned back on them. But those who seek justice, who fight not from hatred but from love and protection, they're the ones who truly win in the end. They're the ones who get to tuck their babies into bed at night, knowing that they stood up when it mattered, that they protected what was precious, and that they emerged from the fire stronger than anyone imagined possible. So here's what I want you to take away from Vanessa's story. Life will throw betrayals at you that you never saw coming. People you trusted will reveal themselves to be your worst enemies. You'll face moments when everything you've built seems ready to crumble. But in those moments, you have a choice. You can let the betrayal define you, or you can let your response to it reveal who you truly are. You can play the victim, or you can become the strategist. You can accept defeat, or you can engineer the most brilliant comeback they never saw coming. What would you have done in Vanessa's shoes? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe to Revenge Unleashed for more stories of people who refuse to stay down. Because sometimes, the best revenge is showing the world that their worst couldn't stop your best.